Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the RISE 2025 annual conference. We're excited to get started. Thank you all for joining us. And we're going to start off with an impact report from Vinci Ho.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, again. Um, Thank you so much for joining us today. Just give me 1 second. I just wanted to make sure that my audio is working fine. Um, and also making sure that Jody, are you a co-host? So I'll let you continue, let people in while I speak. All right, cool. Perfect. Thank you so much. Um, Okay, so welcome to Rise Travel Institute's annual conference 2025. This one is one of the biggest annual events at Rise, and I truly appreciate everyone sacrificing their weekend to join us. Today, we gather here in a space where the graduates of our flagship certificate program in sustainability and anti-oppression in travel present their capstone projects to the wider RISE community, sharing ideas, reflections, and actions to reimagine the travel industry through a lens of justice, equity, and sustainability. So, for those who don't know me, I'm Vinci Ho, the founder and executive director of RISE Travel Institute. Today's conference will be moderated by my colleague Jody Seckel and Natalie Ameskua in the afternoon. So, before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm sitting on the traditional and unceded territories of the Lenni Lenape tribe. And no matter where you are calling in from today, let's take a moment to recognize the deep and enduring bond between the indigenous peoples and their ancestral homelands we now call home. Let us honor their vital role in stewarding this land for generations past, present, and future. Let us also confront the painful truth of historical dispossession and the ongoing oppression and suppression of their voices. Acknowledging injustices is not enough, and we must actively work towards advocating for reconciliation, justice, and equity for Indigenous communities. So, the first agenda item of today's program is a 5-year impact or progress report. As um, as our organization just turned 5, I'd like to give you all a recap on our development and some milestones over the past 5 years. So let me pull up my slides. Can everyone see my deck? Perfect, thank you. So I purposely call it a progress report rather than an impact report because the progress is important and we continue to grow and we continue to evolve, and this is only our first 5 years and there are so many more years to come. And so I'm just like, doing a kind of status report so that everyone knows where we're up to. So for those who are unfamiliar with Rise Travel Institute, we are a 501c3 nonprofit organization established in 2020 to create a more just and equitable world through travel education. Our vision is a world where travelers practice and promote responsible, impactful, sustainable, and ethical travel that uplifts global communities and protects natural ecosystems. It's important to understand our education philosophy. At RISE, we believe education should inspire instead of imposing. We do not preach or shame, nor do we provide rules about what to do and what not to do. Instead, we focus on the why. We offer critical lenses and frameworks that encourage travelers to reflect deeply on the complex systems they participate in. And by fostering awareness, humility, and curiosity, we aim to empower individuals to make conscious, ethical travel decisions that prioritize doing the most good and the least harm to host communities, animals, and the natural environment. So, when we first began doing this work, it was often unclear to people what we mean by sustainable travel education and how we differentiate ourselves from the many organizations and resources that promote sustainable travel and work very hard to close the say-do gap. Over the 5 years, we continue to evolve and examine our role in the industry. And we realize that something is severely lacking. Not more tips. We don't need more tips on how to travel more sustainably. Tips like bring a reusable water bottle or offset your carbon, but a space to engage travelers to think deeply about topics that are often overlooked or intentionally excluded from discussions about sustainable travel. So the longer we exist, the more certain we are about the need for the kind of education that dives deeply and inspires systems thinking and critical consciousness centered on holistic sustainability, justice, decolonial, and regenerative principles to empower travelers to understand the complexities of the systems that we live in, navigate, and contribute to, the industry's impact on communities and the planet as a whole, and the broader implications of our choices and behaviors. So this is a summary of the quantity of all the educational initiatives at RISE over the past 5 years. We ran 8 cohorts of our flagship program, published numerous blog articles, podcast episodes, and other free resources, hosted a number of events, and spoke at even larger number of partner and industry events, panels, workshops, presentations, discussion facilitation, and we also organized 2 experiential journeys for our flagship program alumni. So this is our core or principal, our major program called the flagship program. And this is an overview of all the topics that we covered. We talk about power, privilege, and differences. We talk about how to navigate the world by having awareness of who we are and who we're visiting. And we talk about decolonizing indigenous tourism. We talk about animal in tourism, conserving biodiversity, and we also address issues caused by climate change and climate justice. We also talk about how to photograph mindfully when we travel and things like that. So we have run 8 cohorts already since our inception. And thanks to the 14 amazing instructors that who contributed to the program. And so far we have 226 enrollments, and we issued 60 certificates. So in order to receive the certificate, a student or a participant has to complete a capstone project and present at our annual conference in order to receive the certificate. Which is why, it is a very rigorous program. We don't issue our certificate to anyone who just signs up and stop halfway. We make sure that they finish the entire program and also invested in applying their learnings to what they do and what they're passionate about. And we've also offered 11 tuition grants, and that's our certificate program. And here's just a snapshot of a handful of the many capstone projects that have been presented at our past annual conference. And here is what some of our flagship graduates say about our program. If you want to take a moment to kind of give it a read. Yeah, so just a little more about the participants of our flagship program. Our flagship program is aimed for travelers, but a lot of tourism professionals and seasoned tourism professionals who are already in the sustainable travel space gravitated towards our program because of the depth and breadth of all the topics that we covered in this program. So you can see that a lot of our participants actually already, have a master's degree in sustainability when they come to our program. In addition to our certificate program, we also have short courses on conscious travel in Guatemala, place-based courses that we continue to develop, and courses on themes related to the ethics of travel. And so outside of our digital curriculum, we also have in-person activities. And every year we try to organize one experiential journey for our flagship alumni. So far we've organized 2 experiential journeys, one to Guatemala and the other one to the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico last year. And this year we're going to India. And so we purposely designed our trips to engage our our graduates or alumni to practice conscious travel firsthand. And we also purposely limit our groups to a very, very small size. And here's what people say about our experiential journeys. And most of them, like I would say, all of our experiential journey participants really appreciate the kind of thoughtfulness that we put into designing our program, our itinerary, making sure that we're supporting local initiatives and community and indigenous-led tourism projects. So going back to the last slide, the we supported in the past 2 trips, we supported almost 20 projects led by indigenous communities in both in Guatemala and Mexico. And that's the kind of intentionality that we put into our program design. So yeah, a lot of our participants say that the experience changed their life. They have the best time ever, that they knowing that they are connecting meaningfully with locals, supporting them, and also really appreciating the the travel mates, the groups that they are in, because you have to do you have to have completed the flagship program in order to join the experiential journeys. So by default, like everyone is like-minded, everyone is like very thoughtful and considerate, and really with a strong commitment to social justice and environmental justice coming into our programs. And then we, in the past, over the past 5 years, we've run 5 seasons of our podcast. That is about 39, 40 episodes, and some of them are in the making. So here's a highlight of some of our past podcast episodes. And we cover the right range of topics. We interview tourism professionals, we interview social justice advocates, critical tourism scholars, our alumni, our volunteers, and so we have like a good mix of materials, but all like really focused on talking about conscious travel and justice in travel. And then in the span of the last 5 years, we've also published 50 articles, blog articles, again, like ranging from how to travel ethically in Mount Everest and like what it means by responsible safari tourism, and how can we use sustainable travel to develop rural communities in Nigeria, etc., etc. And then what we're super proud of is an ebook that we published last year called Pathways to Equity, a decolonial guide to travel for the conscious traveler. And it is a 90-page ebook, and it has been downloaded almost 2,000 times since last October. And it has also been used in a number of institutions and organizations such as the Wesleyan University, University of California, Berkeley, and our partner organizations such as Wonderful. So this is, I mean, if you haven't downloaded a copy yet, please do, because I think it is an important resource to help or to support anyone's journey to travel more mindfully and travel more meaningfully. In the past, over the past 5 years, we've also organized 16 events, like big and small. There are conferences, mostly online for inclusivity purposes, but there are also like hybrid events that we organized. And we've also participated or spoke at or presented at 42 partner and or industry events. So here you can see the industry organizations or companies, value aligned companies that we've worked with or continue to work with in the past over the past 5 years. And I know that many of you are here today on this call, so thank you so much for your continued support. I want to give a big shout out to organizations like Travel Unity, Jenny Women, Press, and Tourism Cares, who have representatives here on this call today as well. And Tourism Cares definitely will be one of our partners on a specific project goal in the next few years to come. So very excited about these partnerships. And here's our achievements. And so again, like for the work that we've done so far, we've got industry recognition and also mentions in some of the major media outlets such as the New York Times, the Guardian, and so on. And the latest award that we've received was a DEI Champion Award at the IWTTF International Women in Travel and Tourism Forum last year. So diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice are really like values or values that are in our organization's DNA. We take pride in our commitment to DEI and justice, from recruitment to curriculum development, from events to partnerships, and from contents to marketing. To honor Juneteenth, we offer tuition grants to Africans and African Americans year round. And so if you know anyone who fit this criteria, please reach out, and who are interested in our programs, please have them reach out to us. RISE also sponsors DI workshops for our team members as a part of their staff development efforts. And we also regularly shares educational resources about DEI to foster an environment for continuous learning with respect to equity and inclusion for the RISE team. We also became a member of the Travel Unity Alliance and created a comprehensive DEI. Sorry if you don't mind muting yourselves. There will be chance for you to interact with our presenters later at the Q&A sessions. So if you don't mind muting yourself, that'd be really helpful. Thank you. And so, and we became a member of the Travel Unity Alliance. And we created a comprehensive DEI plan using TU's DEI standards. I'm going to wrap up soon because I know that we're running late. Okay, so the RISE team, before I wrap up this impact report, I'd just like to share that we are a super proud all volunteer organization. All the work that you saw just now is the result of the efforts of a dedicated volunteer team. Over the past 5 years, we've had close to 120 volunteers join our team on the operations team, advisory council, and the board, everyone contributing a few hours per week, all pledged to serve for at least 1 year. And at any given time, there are always around like 30 active team members. And so this is a snapshot of our team demographic. This is a mighty team who can speak 30 different languages. This is a mighty team of women, men, gay, straight, Christian, Jewish, Muslim, Hindi, Buddhist, atheists, indigenous, immigrants, disabled, and all other different identities as well. And this is a mighty team of outstanding professionals, university professors, seasoned tourism professionals, writers, marketing, branding, tech, finance experts, everything. And so that I just wanted to say or reiterate that diversity and inclusion is extremely important to us. We recognize that we should continue to diversify our team to include voices from minoritized groups, but we are super proud that we have a leadership that is extremely diversified in terms of not just in terms of our ethnicity, our professional backgrounds, our religions, our sexual orientation, but just like really uh, a good mix of talents on our board. So I just wanted to take this opportunity to announce our new board. Um, as of June 2025, we have 11 board members, including myself, who is a non-voting member as the executive director. We have Casey Hanisco, who is now our new board president. And so I will, towards the end of the conference, I will give everybody a shout out. I know that most of our board members on this call here today, and Casey Hanisco is going to, say a few words as well towards the end of the conference. And at the end of the conference, around like 3:30, we are going to wrap up the conference with like some really exciting announcements about some of our new programs, initiatives, and publications that we're going to release this summer. So please, if you have to step away, that's totally okay, but please make sure that you come back for the announcements. So yeah, I am done with my part. And so let's dive into the conference itself. And so the first speaker that I'd like to introduce is our keynote speaker, Dr. Anu Taranath. I believe that many of you know her already, but for those of you who don't, Dr. Anu Taranath is a professor at the University of Washington, Seattle, specializing in contemporary world and multi-ethnic literatures, colonial and post-colonial literatures and theory, as well as transnational feminist and cultural studies. She's also the founder and director of Dr. Anu Consulting, where she invites individuals to explore the complexities of history and navigate current challenges with curiosity, honesty, and a deep commitment to social justice. Dr. Anu Taranath is also the author of the award-winning book, Beyond Guilt Trips, Mindful Travel in an Unequal World, which we use at RISE as our course book for the flagship program and other programs as well. So Dr. Anu Taranath, welcome. And if you're ready, please go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Good day to you all. Just give me a moment so I can share a couple slides, please. Are you able to see this? Great. Thank you, Vinci. Hi, everyone from the RISE Travel Institute community. I'm so delighted to join you all today. I've been a little sick, so my voice is not so strong, but I'm strong in spirit and strong in interest being here today, though my voice is a little weak. And I thought in my time today to offer something a little bit what I don't see enough of. In many of our conversations about justice and equity and decolonization and sustainability and frankly, rising fascism and all kinds of things that are happening all over the world. Our personal story fuels us, and yet our personal story feels a little far from some of the work that we do. So I thought today, in my time with you, I would share a bit about my journey through travel and how I come to you today. Vinci has already shared a little bit with you about my work. You might know me from that context. I have 30 years experience teaching about all of these big issues, race and power and navigating difference, otherness, belonging. I bring to you 22 years in global education and traveling with various kinds of groups to different parts of our globe, and to introduce to participants social justice activists and actors who are making lives better for more of us. You might know me from some of the consulting and facilitation work I do. I work with the travel industry. I also work across sectors in a wide range of organizational spaces. And that has been a very important part of my career. And many of you are here knowing me from my book that, as Vinci shared, is part of the flagship program. It's when we talk about journeys, right, and my journey through travel, to be here with you today with not only a book, but a book that has these kinds of awards on it feels astonishing. And also so odd because this was a book that nobody wanted to publish for many, many years. And to go from that to having this kind of recognition for the book makes me pause about the publishing industry, makes me have a lot of skepticism for what gets published and what is told shouldn't get published. It makes me really grateful for some of the ways that this book has circulated with no budget for publicity. It's been a word of mouth endeavor. And so I'm really grateful for RISE for being one of the first, as they say, early adopters of this book and helping it move throughout the community. So thanks, Vinci and crew. What these accolades or what this professional bio doesn't share, however, is some of the routes, the journeys, and the happenstance that brings me here to you. And part of that is my parents' migration from India in 1970 to the United States. My family in India prior to that has had various migrations, but the migration of my parents to the US in 1970, I think constituted something incredibly different. Yes, my family before that had migrated from the rural areas of Western India to more urban areas of South India. Yes, my family has migrated from particular professions into other professions. And yet all of that was within a home country in which the context and the culture they understood. This migration, the one of my parents, shook the stability out of them and invited them, catalyzed for them, and pushed them into so many new experiences, some of which they had skills for, and frankly, many of them that they did not have the skills and histories for. And shortly after their migration to the United States, this child emerges. This child, you can see, is adorable, I think. And this child is incredibly loved, connected, beloved in community, feels a sense of stability, has a sense of possibility to her world, is bright-eyed and curious, and has very little sense of boundaries between herself and the world around her. And then this beloved, safe, and curious child goes to school. And when she goes to school, things start to unravel. Or perhaps the story unfolds as it must. The child is disconnected. The child has very little context for herself. The child has very little sense of self. The child is repeatedly pushed downstairs. The child is told by teacher after teacher that she has no right to be in shared space with others. The child is told she unequivocally does not belong. And a decade and a half of hearing this and feeling this on a pretty much daily basis yields a teenager whose eyes I don't recognize. I see this young person in front of me in this photo, but I don't quite know who she is. I know that she is supposed to be me, and I know that I am her, and yet I feel so far from this young person that's in front of me. I don't know what's happening in her eyes. And even as I was that child and this young person with the shoulder pads of the mid 80s and the polish on the nails, which now I would never have, the child and the young person in front of me is so unrecognizable. And it makes me pause, right? I mean, here we are at a conference that is celebrating the work of flagship alumni, the projects that you all have created and have been working on with a broader sustainable and anti-oppression lens. And part of what I wanted to offer today is just an opportunity for us to pause and reflect on what are the ways that our lives have felt perhaps unsustainable. Though we are working for more sustainable lives and livelihoods now, what are the ways we have felt unsupported in different ways? Though we are working for justice and equity and care for all, so often some of what motivates us into this work is that we ourselves have felt uncared for and have had such misequity and unequity in our pathway, right? So what are some of those links for you? What are some of those links for me? It makes me question, right? And it makes me so curious to be in a community of, I think, like-minded people today in this conference, and also curious to hear and learn other people's personal stories. I know your professional stories. Some of you I know from spaces, a few of you I've met in person. I've read the descriptions of the alumni projects that many of you will share today. And yet this other story, when have you perhaps felt broken? What has felt dispiriting to you? When has your dignity been sucked out of you and why? And importantly, how have you learned to navigate that? How have you learned to reinstill, to fill up that dignity in yourself? Again, my journey through travel is very much a journey through thinking about worthiness, shame, guilt. At some point, it was so clear to me that what was happening to me and my family, I had thought was because we were wrong. We had done something wrong. And so hence all of this treatment was coming on us. And to move from that and to journey to another stage where I started to understand and have language to articulate, wait a minute. I don't think anything's wrong with me or us as a people. I think something's wrong systemically here. Something is wrong with the systems that fuel this notion of we are like this and you are something different, right? To move from the individualized accumulation of shame for the difference that I felt. So to journey from that to nothing's wrong with me, meaning I can still improve, certainly, but fundamentally, nothing is wrong with me. I am deserving of worthiness and dignity, like all. And something is wrong in this system that has taught you to denigrate me in order to build yourself up. To move from that, to journey through some of that, is the journey of my book. It's the journey of my career, and it's the journey of my story. And again, I wonder how might little pieces of my story intersect with, overlap with, or look really different from yours. This quote that I write in the book, "Racism hurts us all. It strips each of us of the enjoyment of our full potential, and it prevents us from enjoying the full potential of each other." This wasn't an easy quote to write. The concept of that quote had to, the fundamental premise of this quote is that I had to move from feeling only like a victim to all that has happened to me, to understanding systemically how these systems of power that so many of us are invested in deconstructing in our work, how those systems of power hurt not only some of the most vulnerable of us in different ways, but they also hurt the perpetrators of these acts as well. They hurt us differently, right? Racism might hurt us all, but it hurts different folks differently. And understanding how power works in these ways has been a really important part of my journey and what brings me here today with you. Part of my path to you today has also been a path through me and through some of the stories and the experiences that I'm briefly sharing with you today. Actually, for us to understand one another more, we need, I don't know, 3 days together with lots of tea and coffee and snacks and walks to really understand how some of the ways that we show up in the world is so based on the kinds of experiences that we've had or not had, right? And two philosophies and two values have really sprung from some of my experiences that I'd like to share with you, please. When we go inside ourselves with curiosity and mindfulness, we bring more curiosity and mindfulness with others. What and how we think about ourselves is deeply connected to how we see and connect with others. I have learned in my own journey through travel and through so many kinds of concepts that the more work and exploration and curiosity I have for me, it's not simply narcissistic, right? One would think that digging into ourselves is narcissistic, but digging into ourselves with fresh curiosity and friendliness actually allows me to clean my pipes so I'm able to receive you and so many others that I get to engage with, right? When I'm not hooked on things in myself, I have more cleanliness, more spaciousness and more graciousness to engage with many others. And that is what I have cultivated over the years. That is what has really fueled my journey through travel. As I travel elsewhere in the world, as I have written about travel, as I invite others to travel with me, some of what I'm sharing today really undergirds and underpins my journeys in the broader world, but also within myself. And I'll end with a part of a quote from our beloved poet Rumi. And this big stone sculpture I saw some years ago in a small retreat center outside of Bangalore, South India, which is where I am right now. And in this retreat center, they have this gorgeous statue. It's about 7 or 8 feet tall. It's quite a large one. And it says, "Something opens our wings, something makes boredom and hurt disappear." And as I have traveled and journeyed through my path, I've thought a lot about what it is that has made my wings close up. And I've also thought a lot about what allows my wings to spread, shine, and shimmer. And I invite you to think a little bit, right, about what is making your wings heavy at different moments, and what is also making your wings shine and shimmer on your own and in community. Thanks so much. I'm looking forward to not just today, but in my life and in my career, having more opportunities to talk to people about the shiny and shimmery and sometimes challenging things that happen to us and how we show up in the world today. So that's a little thoughts from me. Thanks everyone for inviting me here and allowing me to share. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Those were really wise words, and I know we all really appreciate it. We're gonna get started now with our first student presentation of the day. I'm excited to introduce you to Jessica Grant, who is a solo traveler, travel advisor, content creator, and founder of the Wanderlost app, a modern platform designed to make conscious travel choices easy and convenient. After completing Rise's flagship program, she set out to build a tool that empowers travelers to support local and ethical businesses around the world. Originally from the US and currently based in Thailand, Jessica has spent the last 2 years exploring the world as a digital nomad. She's passionate about making travel more inclusive, accessible, and truly impactful. So now I'm going to turn it over to her, and she's going to share her project called Wanderlost, a modern tool for ethical, intentional travel.
Thank you, Jody. I'm just going to go ahead and set up my screen. Okay, everything looks all right. Okay, so hi everyone. As Jody already introduced me, my name is Jessica Grant, and today I'm going to talk about some of the hidden challenges that tourism brings to local communities and introduce Wanderlost, a platform that I created to help address some of these issues. We all know that tourism has many economic opportunities that can be positive, but it also comes with many hidden costs, especially when we think about the local people and the destinations we visit. Beyond the more visible impacts like overcrowding, there are many underlying social, cultural, and economic consequences that often go unnoticed. Today, I want to focus specifically on the economic impacts and the effects of tourism leakage, which is a topic that I first explored through the RISE program session on current power dynamics in travel. Okay. So what is tourism leakage? It is when revenue generated by tourism doesn't stay within the local community. It is leaked away so that tourist spending leaves the destination economy rather than circulating within it. According to the United Nations Environment Program, in developing countries, out of every $100 spent by a tourist, only $5 actually stays in that host community. Another study from UNEP revealed that in Thailand, an estimated 70% of all money spent by tourists ended up leaving the country, as well as 80% in the Caribbean and 40% in India. Choosing to dine at all foreign-owned restaurants that employ locals might not seem like it might seem like enough of a positive contribution during a trip, but the reality is that this spending rarely supports the local economy in a lasting way. Small, locally owned businesses often get pushed out, unable to compete with global companies backed by foreign capital and optimized for scale, not for impact. They may lack the funding, resources, and digital visibility that large or foreign-owned brands have access to, and this is deeply rooted in the global inequalities and systems shaped by colonization. Meanwhile, stronger foreign currencies entering countries that are affordable can inflate the cost of living of the local residents. Housing, food, and basic goods go up in cost while local wages often don't at the same rate. This ends up pushing locals to the outskirts of their own community and makes neighborhoods increasingly unaffordable for those who've lived there for generations. So what we see is that the very people who bring life and culture to a place, like cooks, artists, and shop owners, often are unable to afford to stay in the neighborhoods that tourists are coming to enjoy. A few real-world examples of how we see this is when booking a tour through big international online platforms. That often means that a lot of money goes to that platform and not to the local guide who is providing the experience. When you shop at airport souvenir stores, your dollars are supporting mass-produced imports instead of handmade crafts from local artisans. When you use global travel apps to book everything, small businesses without the resources and digital marketing often never even show up in your search. And even though these choices may feel small, they are, when they're multiplied across millions of tourists, they decide who ends up benefiting from tourism and who gets left behind. Most travelers, I believe, genuinely want to do the right thing. But with the systems currently in place and the tools that we rely on to make these travel choices, it doesn't always make it easy to ensure that our spending actually supports the people who should be benefiting from it most. So why don't travelers already choose local? Why aren't we already making these choices? So if small choices like choosing where you shop, stay, eat, and explore could lead to such big impacts to the local communities, it raises a question as to why we're not already doing this. When we think about the examples I mentioned previously, something they all have in common is convenience and visibility. Today's travelers, especially millennials and Gen Z, plan everything online. 90% of Gen Z uses social media for travel inspiration, and 41% of all travelers in all generations book through online platforms like Airbnb and Booking.com. What happens is the top results that they see is where they spend. But these results are based on algorithms, ads, and budgets, not on ethics and impact. Small businesses can't always afford the 20% average commission fees that online booking platforms are charging, or they don't have access to the digital tools needed to show up in these spaces. So even when travelers do have good intentions, they may not always know where to go to find these local ethical options, especially when we think about animal experiences or cultural tours. Even listings that are labeled as ethical may not always be. And it's not until after we join that we may find this out. So the opportunities for change. The good news is that travelers do want to do better, and according to 2025 Gen Z travel trends and statistics, 56% of Gen Z travelers are prioritizing sustainable and responsible travel. And more than half of them are already open to or already using AI to plan their trips. So what this means for us is that the desire for conscious ethical choices is clearly there, but the platforms that they're using to make these decisions don't reflect these values. Instead, they prioritize profit and visibility, often leaving the small, local, or responsible businesses out of itineraries completely. As social media and AI become the new travel agent, shaping everything from inspiration to booking in the travel choice process, we have a huge opportunity to redirect tourist behavior and make ethical local choices the mainstream rather than just the niche or the alternative choice. So that gap between intention and access is exactly what Wanderlost was created to help bridge. So Wanderlost is a digital platform that helps travelers find, support, and connect with local and ethical businesses around the world. On Wanderlost, these types of businesses are not the alternative or the niche, they are just the standard. It's built on the idea that when we make responsible travel choices more visible, accessible, and convenient for everyone, real impact will come. So the app helps travelers by making it so that they can search by category, like stays, food, tours, guides, everything that is involved in what you'd be looking for when you're making travel-related choices. And they can filter by values, tags like women-owned, LGBTQ inclusive, and more. There's also a feature that allows them to locate mobile vendors like food carts and pop-ups, and these type of businesses virtually never have a presence in the digital space. When you think about maybe a food cart, or a street food cart, these things, they don't have a digital presence. So when it comes to how a traveler can find them and put their businesses towards them, it's usually impossible. Another feature of the app is it allows travelers to learn quick facts like cultural tips, basic phrases in the local languages, and details about the destination easily. And it helps them plan their trip by building itineraries within the app, making it easy to pull directly from the business directory. And because this platform doesn't run on ads or algorithms, it aims to create a place that helps level the playing field for small businesses and ethical-based businesses to be seen. So I want to share a quick personal story example that also influenced some of the ideas and features on Wanderlost. So while in Koh Phangan, Thailand, I frequented a small secondhand shop that sold clothing called Suza, which stands for Support Us Supporting Animals. It was run by a local woman who turned her home into the shop and used the proceeds to care for and rehome stray animals around the island, which was her passion. She once shared with me how rising rent was making things hard, and when I returned 6 months later to the island, the shop, which was also her family's home, was gone and is currently being rebuilt into something else. I reached out to her and she confirmed that the rent had become unaffordable. It continued to go up and she couldn't pay, so she was forced to close. Now she runs Suza as a pop-up shop, setting up a tent in rotating locations around the island, and she still continues her mission of caring and feeding for the stray animals, despite trying to stay afloat and the struggles of having to constantly move around. This experience is not the only one, but this one really stayed with me. It made me realize how many purpose-driven businesses disappear, not because they lack the heart or the impact, but because they lack support and visibility. That's exactly why I added the mobile business feature to Wanderlost, because with it, someone like the Suza shop owner can drop her live location on the app's map, and travelers nearby can easily find her without needing a storefront and without struggling to pay for these prices. So Wanderlost is all about making sure people like her aren't left behind because of these impacts that we see from tourism. And this is an example of what like a business card will look like on the app. This is her shop. And sorry. Yeah. Okay. So what is different about Wanderlost versus the many travel tools that already exist? So Wanderlost helps travelers spend intentionally without needing to be experts in ethical tourism. Although this education is extremely important and impactful, it is not always accessible to everyone. So it removes the guesswork and the extra research often involved with making better travel choices. It's also about changing the perspective. Sometimes ethical, sustainable, or local choices are seen as a compromise or come with the idea that it means sacrificing luxury, quality, or comfort in some way, but that's definitely not the case. These businesses often offer richer, more personal, and meaningful experiences rooted in community, story, and culture. And this is about expanding this way of travel and redefining what good travel choices can actually look like. So businesses that are listed on the app will be verified before going live based on a basic criteria that was inspired by the ethical frameworks that I learned during the RISE flagship program. Things like local ownership and operation, community-rooted impact, and ethical practices like making sure they're not exploitative to animals or children and avoid sex tourism activities. And yes, so this is an example of the form, and it's currently available in 16 languages. And this is where it will be easy for anyone to go on and add their business, and it will go through a verification process before it enters the platform. So the app is a modern tool, and it was designed with both the travelers and the business owners in mind. So for travelers, they don't have to be an expert, as ethical options are already curated and verified. And AI-powered itineraries recommend only values-driven businesses. Map-based views and location-based results within the app also make it easy to discover nearby places on the go or while they're on their trip. And also we have the trip planning feature that makes it easy to plan in advance. Built-in cultural context also helps the traveler learn about a place before they go. And for the local businesses or the business owners, it provides a free, easy-to-use submission form in many languages. It has no booking fees or advertising pressure, and the app simply acts as a platform to connect the traveler to the business's individual websites, contact details, or location. And overall, it just is fair visibility regardless of budget or social media presence for the business. So what would be next for Wanderlost? As it's still in development, it is on the way of becoming available to everyone, but what's coming, more features that I have planned is full AI itinerary builder that only pulls from the verified businesses within the app. And I know that AI has its own ethical concerns, but when we think about how many people are already relying on AI to build their trips completely, if we create a model that pulls businesses and puts them in front of people that are verified and ethical and locally led, it can make a big difference in where tourist dollars are going. More accessibility features for users and business owners, as well as expanding the business directory to more destinations around the world through partnerships and community submissions. The goal of Wanderlost is not just about helping travelers find where to go, but to redefine how modern travel can function in a more just human way. Okay. To combat tourism leakage and help build a more equitable travel industry, we need tools like this one that level the playing field for everyone involved. Wanderlost is just one tool and one idea and a small piece of a much larger solution. But small pieces like this and the introduction of similar tools or initiatives have the power for major impact. This is what sustainable tourism is all about, transforming the way we connect with places, redistributing power, and making sure that tourism actually benefits the communities that we are privileged to visit. So the next time you are traveling the next time you're traveling, instead of heading to Starbucks, find the local cafe, support the artist that is local, or stop by the local shop instead of the 7-Eleven. Because small choices like this, when made at scale, have the power to reshape entire systems. And if I have more time, I was going to just show briefly what it is like on platform right now. So as you can see, it makes it easy for users to go search a destination or search what they're looking for, such as things to do in Bangkok or places to eat in Bangkok, and it directs them to the business directory. They also have the option to use location-based search options, and it will give them full details when the businesses will have photos and tags and all of the contact information. And then they also have the option to discover places. So let's say they are looking at Berlin, it will have all of the businesses as well as these basic facts and photos and the map as well. So it still has a long way to go, but it is very exciting. And I just want to close off my time by saying thank you to Rise Institute for inspiring this work. I originally joined the program just wanting to understand my role as a traveler, and everything I learned really influenced this product as well as everything I'm working on. So I'm honored to be here, and I'm excited to be a part of the conversation. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Jessica. There's a lot of excitement in the chat. There are a few questions, so we're going to go ahead and share some of those.
Okay.
The first question comes from Carolyn, and she says, can travelers recommend businesses, or is it just for businesses? What's the business model? Is there a fee? And she is from Journey Women, so she's sharing a bit about her travel directory. There's a comprehensive verification process that includes values, women, ownership percentage, staff, etc. Is that similar to what you're doing?
Yes, so thanks for the question. So basically, right now, I don't have like a profit-based business model. I kind of just created this because first of all, I wanted this tool, and I know a lot of people that this tool would be useful for, and I think it can have a huge impact. So right now, it's based on the idea that travelers and business owners can submit businesses. So businesses can submit their own information, or travelers can nominate a business, and the idea of the verification process is it's following certain guidelines, making sure the things I mentioned. And at this stage, I'm really hoping to be able to partner with like organizations that are already kind of doing the work and put their organizations on the platform instead of, because the goal of the app is just to connect the traveler to these things. So if it's a tour operator or if it's a business itself, the goal of the platform is just to get these things in front of the traveler, because I feel like a big challenge is, like I mentioned, it's hard to find them sometimes, and if you're not specifically looking for them, it can be a challenge. So if that answers the question, yes, maybe I can speak with her, because this is the next step, is expanding that directory with businesses like hers, and getting this all in one place for everyone to be able to benefit the same.
Yeah, thank you. Another question we have is, what are your plans for funding? How is your business going to be funded?
To be completely honest, I don't have a plan for funding. I built this app on my own, and I'm continuing to develop the features. I don't want the app to be based. I don't want the app to charge the business owners, because I think that defeats the purpose of the app. But maybe in the future, with advanced features like the AI feature or the advanced itinerary builder, maybe I will have like a user pricing model that can have, in order to unlock the full features and full access, it will have a fee for users. But right now, I don't have a pricing in mind.
And then another question is, does it integrate with Google Maps or Apple Maps, or are you planning for that in the future?
Yes. So maybe I didn't show, but on on the app, when you go, let me just show you. When you go here, you can go to the map view, and it's connected to Google Maps. So the idea is that when the user opens the app, they can put their location, or if they're not at the location they're looking for, they can type it in. But based on their location, it will update results on the map, and also based on the search results. So yes, it is map integrated, and each of the businesses' locations will direct them right to Google Maps to get real-time directions as well.
Okay, and then the last question I see here is, do you have a vetting team? And Karen wants to know if you need help.
No, I don't. I'm just doing this by myself, and yes, I need help.
Great. Well, I would encourage you then, and all of our presenters, to if you feel comfortable, put your email in the chat so that anyone who's attending today can get in touch with you if they want to ask more questions or they want to talk more about your project and your plans. I definitely saw someone say they'd love to reach out and collaborate with you. So hopefully this conference leads to lots of partnerships in the future. If there are no more questions, thank you so much, Jessica. I'm really excited to use this app in the future for my travels. And this is really exciting. So with that, we're going to move on to our next presentation.
Thank you.
Well done. Okay. Would you mind stopping your share so I can?
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm trying to figure out how.
Thank you. Okay, next up we have, Saba Kauser is a behavioral change specialist applying behavioral science to design sustainable and responsible travel solutions. With a master's in behavioral and decision sciences from the University of Pennsylvania, she works with Behavior Smart and Royal Enfield Social Mission, where she researches motorcycle rider behavior and its impact on high altitude mountain communities and landscapes. Her work blends behavioral research with practical strategies to embed sustainability into the design of travel experiences, making responsible choices easier and more intuitive. A passionate traveler and lover of the Himalayas, Sabra brings a people-centered, impact-driven approach to solving complex challenges in the travel space, blending research, creativity, and a deep commitment to sustainability. And she's going to be presenting her project called Stories of Ladakh, Tales of Culture, Connection, and Climate in the Land of High Passes, the Land of Llamas, the Little Tibet.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Jody, for the introduction. Without further ado, I would share my screen quickly. I'm going to delve into my capstone. Because I have a lot to share, and I hope I am able to cover everything within this time. I will be taking you to a land which has been my biggest inspiration, and I've seen it through different lenses, and hope you enjoy and get inspired the way I have been. Um, Ladakh. Ladakh is where I've been for the first time 3 years ago as a pure tourist. Then that time I was in the US and I was working, in healthcare and corporate. I came back to my hometown in India. I'm also based in Bangalore currently. And I started to travel and think about where I want to take behavioral science next. And that was the time when I enrolled into the RISE program. So I decided to visit Ladakh again because each of the RISE modules kept making me think about, different aspects of this region. And this time when I went again, I was a completely different person with a completely different lens, and I'm going to share how that featured in the slides ahead. This is something that resonates a lot with me, which was shared on Rise's post recently, that ethical travel asks us to reflect on history, amplify marginalized voices, and build a future where justice is woven into every journey. And I also am a big, big, big believer of this quote from Pico Iyer is that you travel not to fit into places often, but to fit into the people. So I will the key themes and the questions that I wanted to explore through my capstone were, from the lens of sustainability, that how does the cold, fragile desert ecosystem meet modern tourist demands? And from the lens of anti-oppression, how do we move beyond the tourist gaze to amplify local voices and understand the true power dynamics at play? The methodology that I've used is photographs and my first-hand encounters. These are all photographs by me and a couple of my closest friends. So apologize if these are not, some of those are not top grade. This is the map of India, is a huge country. As you can see on the western side, on the eastern side is the plateau of Tibet. And Ladakh is actually at the northern Himalayan ranges, very part of the Tibetan plateau actually. And then on the west is Pakistan, and on the north is, Central Asia and Afghanistan. So Ladakh was actually a big pivotal point during the Silk Route and the trade route. It was a point of, critical, stoppages by the caravans all the way from China up to Central Asia and Persia. That's why although it is rooted in Tibetan Buddhism and has, similarities in culture with Tibet when it comes to religion, food, people, dressing, but also has a significant Muslim population being on trade with Persia. Historically, it has been a huge farming community and had a significant amount of population into nomadism, who were herders. But of course, there has been changes, and I'm going to speak about it. Historically, the community also shared a culture of interdependence. So it is a cold desert at the altitude of 3,500 to 4,500 meters. So it is low in oxygen, very high and it gets closed down from mainland India and rest of the world for 6 months of the winter. So it has developed traditionally surviving techniques like storing food, or farming collectively, often also engaging in practices like polyandry to have not have conflict of interest with different farmland in the same family. This definitely, all of this has sort of died down over the last few decades when Ladakh opened to tourism in the 1960s after China's annexation of Tibet. And, then the foreign nationals who were adventurous and trekkers then moved to, this little region in India. But what I still see, this photograph, not that great, but was actually a clip from a video that I was taking. What still exists in this main market of Ladakh is these ladies selling vegetables together. And it's still a community activity. If one of them is taking a break or is, not here and a customer approaches, the other one watches out, does not try to compete for the customer, and then they do it as like an activity that they enjoy. With tourism, as I mentioned, 1970 onwards is when Ladakh started to see, people from rest of the world or even India, for that matter. India opened to globalization in 90s, and that's when, people who were beyond the adventure and adventure seeking started visiting Ladakh. Earlier, it used to be reached only by high mountain passes, but now, accessibility was becoming easy. There was also, funny, but also a historical transformation that opened up Ladakh to the domestic population was in 2009. The super popular Bollywood movie called Three Idiots that released. There's this popular movie star called Amir Khan in it, if anybody is familiar. Very popular in China, though. And then Ladakh saw this wave of domestic tourism emerging. And so this homestay owner that's I visit quite often, he tells me that in our one of our conversations that we cannot hear the prayers anymore. The buildings and the construction and the markets and the hotels and everything has popped up in the vicinity that earlier they could hear prayers from the monasteries and temples, which they cannot. This another picture is of this beautiful peak which is visible right as you step out on the Leh airport. Leh is the capital of Ladakh. It's called Stok Kangri. It's about 6,000 meters, which is also considered a practice trek for Mount Everest. But because of over tourism and heavy traffic, it was closed down for 2 years because a lot of wastage from the trek started going down through the river to the village. So yes, what Ladakh face is in the last few decades is new aspirations, new risk, turning eventually from farming and slow life to fast tourism income. The winter gap still exists. The mountain passes are closed, so you cannot visit all of the regions in Ladakh during the winter. So the income from the tourism is very seasonal, which led to the local population taking a lot of loans and being in debt because they know that tourism is the major source of income for the 6 months in the season. So a lot of investment in eateries and homestays and taking huge loans that they're not able to pay back over years. And that what I want to attribute to is called the planning fallacy in behavioral science, underestimating risk and overestimating returns. um, another critical factor about Ladakh that's been shifting is the use of resources and particularly water, because it had the population of Ladakh over decades, over centuries, has been very limited, and they would rely hugely on the water from glaciers. And Ladakh gets, minimum rain, like around 4 inches a year. So the traditional local population was never used to using water like the way we do. So even a flush toilet is the clash with Ladakh's water scarce reality. But in today's time, it's Ladakh is full of bathtubs and showers and everything. What traditionally they used to have is a dry compost toilet, and the manure used to be used for their agricultural activities. This makes me summarize or think about Ladakh stories as from this book by Thomas Hyland Erickson, a renowned anthropologist, of how small places tend to have these large issues, or get into the phenomena of demonstration effect, where cooperative and traditional lifestyles seem to deem backward over years, and what comes as the indicator of development is modernization and seeking towards the west. So I love this quote by local futures representative that I happened to meet. Is this old culture was about frugality, affection, and care, and the present is about livelihood from fast income through tourism. I want to now touch upon a few stories from the people, and share the first-hand account. So here is a cafe built on a beautiful riverbank of Indus, and this cafe was a corporate social initiative by a motorcycle. Oh, so I already mentioned in my intro that I work with Royal Enfield. So it was a CSR project by them, but it is fully community driven. So they cook local food here, and it's run by 6 local women as volunteers on a rotational basis, and all the proceeds go back to the community. I also have a picture because I visited this cafe before joining to work with Royal Enfield, and I was very surprised that this part of India in the world there was an accessible toilet, framed as accessible toilet next to a water refilling station, and this was a huge surprise, and I had to take a picture. um, Ladakh also borders, Pakistan. So what happens in this town is this was a part of this region in Pakistan called Baltistan until 1970s. And post-war, it was, it became part of India. So much of its regions, the bigger region is now in Pakistan, but this little town is in India. And one photo of me on the top you can see behind is actually Pakistan. But this militarized zone has seen a lot, has lost family members to the other side of the border, but they continue to be resilient. And when I was taking a walk through one of the little cafes for a hot cup of tea, and then and this lady I met, Abida, and she makes the best omelet at that altitude of 4,000 meters. And I happened to, see a book on the table, and I turn the pages and I see, oh, it's a United Nations publication by the Ford Foundation, and I see her photo and her work, and I had to capture it. She created a women's self-help group where she says that she wanted a space where women can meet, learn, and earn together. They create a lot of things and sell to the local market, and her work and her movement got featured in this beautiful book. And while I stood there, I just thought about that, do mountains know what is India and Pakistan? Aren't they in perfect unison, only letting the river pass through them? This was my amazing driver who drove me around for about 2 weeks across the region of Ladakh. He was from Dras, which is cited as the world's second coldest inhabited place. He is a passionate ice hockey player, and I have lived in the US and other places, and I know that a lot of the world does not even know that this sport exists in India. Even India didn't know this sport existed in India. Uh, um, but there, so it is mostly supported and encouraged by the local systems in Ladakh, which is not enough to bring it to the global scale. But there are passionate players, and my driver was one of them. He was a graduate in anatomy, and he told me that he's often disheartened by, sometimes tourist insensitivity, and he dreams to write his own book, taking, his own book on human behavior. While I was walking through that same border village, I stopped by and I see these juicy apricots and apples, and I sit down, and the seller is very, astonished that how come I sitting down and chilling and talking to him, and he quoted that, youngsters don't like to sit with the oldies, and I just, laughed and, continued my conversation, and just realized that, how travel is so inspiring in moments like these, in building connection. One of my stops in Ladakh was this 7-star beautiful resort, and it reaffirms my belief that sustainability does not have to be, not luxury. It can be very much luxury. This beautiful property that he's made is fully by local architectural style of rammed earth, overlooking the beautiful Karakoram range, with all of the food that they source within 2 kilometers, and all of the experiences they offer are local. He is an IIT, is like likes of MIT and Stanford in India. So he is very much a tech guy who came back to his roots and created something beautiful. My last story on people is this souvenir shop is very great friend. He hand embroiders these beautiful shirts, and every time I visit, I bring back a shirt. Um, and he tells me that how over years he's seen that there have been places loaded with mass-produced products, and which takes away livelihoods from local artisans. A big issue that I want to highlight that faces Ladakh and a lot of Himalayan regions is the issue of glaciers. These Himalayan regions, Tibetan Plateau and Ladakh, are considered the third pole, as they are the source. They have the largest freshwater glaciers in the world, and the water from these sources not only affect locals but also a lot of regions in Asia. So there is crisis because of the climate change and global warming, and especially these regions are because the sustenance on water for the local community was enough, but with the visitors, 500,000 visitors in Ladakh every year, and Ladakh is just one part. So all across Himalayas, it is incredible increment in those time and the use of water. So which is leading to double the speed of glaciers receding and water level becoming more and more scarce. But there was an incredible innovation from this land, which is one of the world's most inspiring climate adaptation stories I've ever come across. The idea came from this retired engineer Chewang Norfel, but Sonam Wangchuk, who is a prominent figure in Ladakh, he's an innovator, scientist, also actually the inspiration of that movie I spoke about, Three Idiots. He's the protagonist where he developed the school of vocational ideas, and this is how he scaled through his institution, Himalayan Institute of Alternative Learnings, that they store ice in winter in this form and vertical cannons, which is actually inspired from Buddhist stupas. Those are Buddhist sacred places of worship and inspiration. And then there's a pipe that you can see, and then this pipe in the spring takes water to the agricultural fields. So this was an ingenious idea, blending traditional knowledge and engineering, and helps a lot of villages. It was taken to Chile with having the same kind of terrain and problems last year, through the institute. So these are some of the guardians. I was just talking about Sonam Wangchuk, the innovator who's spreading the ice stupa technology to the world through his institute, Himalayan Institute of Alternatives. Uh, Local Futures is by Dr. Helena Norberg Hodge. She's one of the pioneer writers of transformation of Ladakh from 1970s to 90s, and works excessively in the region to promote local. I would highly encourage to read her book, Ancient Futures. These are some of the girls I met on one of the war towns in Ladakh. Ladakh is prone to wars because of a lot of bordering regions, as you saw on the map. And then this village, one of the teachers told me that a lot of sons or the boys of the villages are encouraged to go out and study, but the people who remain in the schools are actually girls. So he is doing a lot with the girl empowerment, and these girls when I met, were painting the whole town with their beautiful murals. Um, and then Ladakh is also prone to some endangered species like the snow leopard and brown bear, and a lot of conservancies are at it to preserve these. From the lens of becoming an ally as a tourist, what I draw from Ladakh story is to how to be aware and how to have the knowledge to travel to such places where each action a ripple effect in, bigger changes, bigger impact. How do you, choose intentionally? How do you tread lightly? How can you value the resources? How can you make connections and know their stories? And how can you, let Ladakh be, change tourism for Ladakh and not Ladakh for tourism? Looking ahead from the questions that I began with is, for Ladakh is definitely at a crossroads of navigating deep tensions between beauty and fragility, tradition and modernity. But there's a lot of work going on ground, and which is commendable. Ladakh is a union territory in India right now, so it is under the central government, and it's been fighting since the last decade to have more local leadership, more local autonomy for its development. And I hope that comes in soon. So beyond the tourist gaze, one definitely wants to, have Ladakh an economy where tradition and modernity coexist. It may not be about preservation versus progress, but to have Ladakh evolve in its own terms, both for locals and visitors. Jule means hello and thank you in Ladakhi, and I have a lot of thank you for all of these amazing people who shared their stories with me and my amazing references from these books. Ancient Futures should be on everybody's list. If you've not even traveled to Ladakh or didn't know where Ladakh was, I think Ancient Futures by Helena Norberg Hodge is a beautiful piece. Thank you. This is my email, LinkedIn, and Instagram, and open to connect and discuss further.
Thank you so much. We have time for one question. There is one question in the chat. How long were you traveling through the region and collecting these stories?
It was about 10 days, but so it was very lucky for me. I went first time, as I mentioned, as a tourist. Second time, I wanted to go back to do something with the rice capstone. But as soon as I came back, I somehow got this project to research on motorcycle rider behavior. And having a motorcycle in India is synonymous with riding it through these adventurous passes in Ladakh. So actually, I am preparing for another field trip in 2 days to Ladakh, and now my work in Ladakh will continue through these projects. So I consider Rise very, very lucky for me.
Wow, 2 days. Safe travels, and we really look forward to seeing more about your journeys and your stories. Once again, I encourage everyone to share their information in the chat and keep the conversation going, and also connect offline so that you can continue the conversation. It looks like in the chat there's already lots of possible connections brewing, so that's really exciting to see. Well, thank you so much for your presentation. We're now going to move on to our next one. And our next presentation is by Diane Ashley, who is a public health nutritionist, project manager, and sustainability professional with over 15 years of international experience across UN agencies, NGOs, and the private sector in West and Central Africa, Southeast Asia, and Europe. A graduate of the Rise Travel Institute's flagship program, she explores practical ways to reduce overconsumption and promote more inclusive tourism. Her capstone investigates the environmental impact of short-use travel items, and she's currently developing Rent It Aura and Plugsy Box, two early-stage concepts designed to make sustainable travel more convenient and locally beneficial. And her project is called Sustainable Travel Through Shared Use of Travel Items. So I'll now turn it over to Diane.
Hi, thank you very much, Jodie. Hello, everybody. Thank you for the introduction. I'll just try and share my screen. Hopefully you can see that okay. There's a bit of a delay on the line. I've had some internet problems today, so I haven't put my camera on. I hope that's come up for everybody. Oops.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, I'll just put it on the presentation mode. Oh dear, I am having quite a big delay on my end.
Diane, why don't you start talking and we can
Yes,
send
okay.
out your slides later.
Right, let me can you see the slides now?
We can see the first one.
The first one, okay, let me right, okay, I hope that's okay. Right.
Perfect.
Okay, great. Okay, so yes, so I'm really happy to be here today to present my capstone project to you. So it aims to explore local item rental as a way to make travel more sustainable, with focus on Rome, which is where I'm living. Now, as we know, tourism is a multi-billion-dollar industry. It supports millions of jobs, connects cultures, supports local economies, and brings happiness to many people. However, while tourism brings some benefits, it also creates many sustainability challenges. Now, for my capstone project, I've looked specifically at climate change, the inequitable distribution of the benefits of tourism, and also overconsumption and waste. Now, just to give some more information and stats around these issues as background, some of these have come from the course, others have come from other papers. So firstly, as we know, tourism is a significant driver of climate change, contributing nearly 9% of global greenhouse gas emissions. And emissions have been rising by about 3.5% every year, with this trend projected to continue. Now, transportation is a major source of greenhouse gas emissions. But it's also important to note that indirect emissions are also contributing, and these are embedded in the goods and services that are purchased when traveling, and also in their supply chains. Now, tourism also contributes, as we know, to overconsumption and waste. And while food packaging waste and single-use plastics are main contributors, other items discarded during trips also add to the problem. One report, really interesting report that I read, found that a mind-boggling 2/3 of UK tourists apparently forget items and spend millions replacing things that they already own. So this increase in purchases naturally leads to an increase in waste and an increase in greenhouse gas emissions. Now, tourism also contributes to an inequitable distribution of wealth, with big corporations dominating and locals having a smaller market share. Now, looking at Rome as an example, it's Rome from a Rome Business School 2024 report. Rome had 27 million visitors in 2023 and is projected to have over 30 million visitors this year, particularly this year being a Jubilee year. The city already has waste management challenges, and this is exacerbated by tourists, and also in the high tourism areas, large businesses predominantly dominate. Now, addressing these sustainability challenges requires a systems thinking approach, recognising the planet as an interconnected domains, as we learned from the RISE course and from the Sustainability Lab. And addressing these challenges also requires a coordinated effort among the various different sectors, whether that's government, business, academia, international organisations, and civil society. Now, oops. Oops, let me just go back here. So just as an example of this, for transportation, which contributes around 5% of global emissions, industry, quite rightly so, has a big part to play to try and reduce those global emissions. And they are innovating in the sense that they're developing new technology, whether that's with aircrafts, more sustainable fuels, but that progress is far too slow, and no one sector can do it alone. And it really is for for businesses and governments, innovators and travellers, really everyone to come together to do their part. Now, with regard to travellers, even small shifts in traveller behaviour when scaled across large numbers can lead to significant benefits, whether that's by flying less, different ways of flying more efficiently, and to a certain extent with all the challenges that come with that, whether that's with offsetting emissions, but obviously with caution depending on the types of programmes that are used and the extent to which that's combined with other reduction strategies. Now, it's important to mention that the challenge of the traveller intention behaviour gap. A recent study from the World Travel and Tourism Council found that only 7 to 11% consider sustainability a key factor in their travel choices, and that's even among environmentally conscious travellers. For most people, cost and quality really still rule the decisions people make when they travel and the purchasing behaviour that they have. Now, behaviour tools certainly help travellers and tourism professionals make sustainable choices, and are certainly doing a lot to improve or to narrow rather the travel intention behaviour gap. But businesses really, I feel, businesses really have an important role to play to help make sustainable choices easier. And there's a number of ways they can do this. That's by making sustainable choice more affordable, more simple, more accessible, to really highlight the benefits, improve their marketing, so less of the greenwashing and clearer communications. Also, businesses have a role to contribute more to the circular economy by preventing waste and pollution at the design stage, and also by looking to prolong the lifespan, reuse, repair, and also recycling. Okay, so one solution I've been looking at, I say solution, but obviously it's a drop in the ocean compared to the many solutions that are needed to attack these very big issues. But one thing I've been looking at is expanding the use of local rental items for travellers. Now, these are initiatives that are already taking place. Different countries now starting to do this more and more as part of the sharing economy. And the aim is really to decrease consumption and waste, and make tourism more equitable, so that income distributes a little bit more fairly in the local economy. Now, I did a little bit of my own market research on this last year, because as I'll come on to in a minute, I've been working on developing 2 very early stage startups. And market research I did last year with Zoho Surveys looked at 350 Americans and 500 Italians. And of the Americans, over 3/4 said they were interested in directly renting items from locals. And of the Italians, 2/3 said they felt the need for a travel rental platform, with over half saying they were willing to lend their own items directly to travellers. Speaking with travel professionals, majority of those travel professionals being in Rome, and also travellers, they felt that their needs for rental were more sort of high value, bulky or voltage compatible items. That convenience, cost and trust will drive adoption, and that this type of service or platform might be more suitable to medium to low budget travel light families or outdoor adventurers. And people also said that they really felt the need for better solutions to help if they needed, say, travel adapters or travel chargers, these types of things that loads of people forget when they're traveling. And then people tend to end up buying a cheap new one and then have 2 or 3 of these items, or items get discarded and they end up as travel waste. So anyway, just to say here, I've got some images here at the bottom of the types of items that people said they would be interested in renting when traveling. So it can be baby equipment. This is to save people from having to carry those items, which can reduce, help people travel lighter, reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Also things like mobility aids, electronics, outdoor gear. Just a little bit about these early stage rental startups. I was in earlier this year, was in the Rome Business School incubator program. So started working on a rental platform that aims to connect locals to travellers starting in Rome so that they can lend items directly to travellers. So it would be the local people or otherwise small local businesses that can rent items to locals. I'm also starting to develop something called, it's like a borrow box. I've called it Plugsy Box, but this is a box which I'm piloting in holiday accommodation. And the aim of this is that if people have forgotten any type of their a travel adapter, or whether they've forgotten their phone charger, or the key types of travel technology that people, typically travel with but might forget, that they can borrow that rather than buying it. And they will borrow that for free. But should somebody, not return the item, then they would be charged a fee at that point. So the aim really is to reduce travel waste and also hopefully save people money as well. Okay, so what I've tried to do as well is look at these two projects through the lens of the sustainability framework. So this is the Sustainability Lab framework through the different domains. So from an economic perspective, the aim is really save cost savings for travellers, income generation for locals. For the social domain, support the UN Sustainable Development Goals. What's really important for me is really working on the ethical marketing and storytelling that's inclusive and accessible travel for all. On the material domain, to sort of shared use and reuse over ownership, that people can travel lighter and reduce consumption, so contribute to lower greenhouse gas emissions, extend the product lifespan, reduce waste, encourage responsible travel practices. And also what I'd like to do as well is to provide some guidance on the responsible disposal and recycling of these items once they get to the point where they can no longer be used, to sort of see how they can be responsibly disposed of. Okay, so that's pretty much it. We'll pretty much come to the end, but just to say, well, thank very much to Rise for the course. I have to say I learned a huge amount, and really will certainly be going back to the notes to really sort of apply the principles moving forward, both for the projects but also for me personally. So thanks very much. I'll hand it over to questions, and please do feel free to connect with me as well. I am aware there's quite a big delay my end, so I hope that that went okay. I seem to have lost my presentation now.
You're great. We have time for some questions. Thank you so much, Diane. That was wonderful. A lot of people in the chat agree that these are excellent ideas, and we're all really excited for them. If you have any questions, you can put them in the chat. There's one comment. This is a great thing also for people going on treks in places like Tanzania and Peru, but don't want to pack all of their hiking and camping gear just for a few days. So another thing to think about. Similarly, a great thing for short-term volunteers who might not want to purchase all new household items for such a short time while they're abroad. So it sounds like there are lots of ideas and opportunities to continue to build on this. Are there any other questions for Diane? Remember, get in touch with each other and you can continue these conversations offline. And the slides, all of everyone's presentation slides will be in the recording that we'll be sending out soon. So if you missed something, you'll be able to see it a little bit. There's a question from Carolyn. She said she loves this idea and she would add mobility devices like foldable stools, small portable coolers, and maybe even coolers to keep medication cold, perhaps, as just a suggestion. So lots for
no, that's I have to say that's a very good idea. I've actually have had a doctor from a local travel international medical aid. He works with travellers and tourists when they come and they need expat help. And he actually approached me about that as an idea as well. So No, I think that's really important. If anything, that should be a primary factor on the platform, because people that need medical care when they're traveling should certainly be provided. Things like ventilators and things have come up as well. So that is something I'm looking into, but it does mean more sort of specialist support, if you know what I mean, in terms of sourcing the right items and then cleaning them and etc. when they're finished. But no, totally, I'm glad to hear that idea resonates with you as well.
That's awesome. Carolyn also said she is representing Journey Women, and you're welcome to survey her group of female travelers who are 50 plus and who are generally traveling solo. So lots of opportunities there. Thank you so much, Diane.
Wonderful. Thank you. That's great. Thanks very much. Great. Thank you.
So if there are no other questions at this time, of course, keep the questions coming later on. I'm going to start with our next presentation. So, oops. Okay. Christina Rocks is a hospitality and tourism professional with over a decade of experience and a strong focus on ethical and community-centered travel. A graduate of UCF's Rosen College and USF's Global Sustainability Program, she currently serves as Community Impact Manager at Tourism Cares. For her RISE flagship capstone, Christina created a visual presentation on decolonizing tourism in South Dakota, a topic deeply personal to her as her mother's family is from the Rosebud Reservation. Her work reflects a passion for storytelling, systems change, and honoring Indigenous perspectives in the tourism industry. And her presentation is titled Decolonizing Indigenous Tourism in South Dakota. Unfortunately, Christina could not be here to present herself, so she recorded a presentation for us, which I will share now. And since she is, of course, unable to be here to answer questions after her presentation, I would encourage everyone to connect later on and get in touch with her. Here we go.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining today. My name is Christina Rocks, and I am the Community Impact Manager for Tourism Cares. I'm honored to present my capstone project, Beyond the Monument, Decolonizing Tourism in South Dakota. So over the next few minutes, I'll share challenges, opportunities, and best practices around tourism in South Dakota, and how we can move toward a future that centers Indigenous communities. So as you watch this session, I invite you to reflect on your own experiences within travel. Tourismizing tourism means addressing historical injustices and building systems rooted in healing, reciprocity, and equity with Indigenous communities, not just about them. Tourism plays a huge economic role in South Dakota, drawing visitors to iconic sites like Mount Rushmore, the Black Hills, and Badlands National Park. But these sites also sit on sacred lands. The Native American Tourism Development Management Plan emphasizes the importance of including Indigenous voices in this growing industry. So how much do you actually know about these places? Have you heard the original Lakota stories behind them? These landmarks are more than just scenic. They're spiritually significant places that were cared for long before colonization. Acknowledging that is a key step toward a more respectful tourism culture. For every monument that draws a crowd, there's often a deeper story of displacement, of reverence, and of resilience. So Indigenous cultures are central to what makes South Dakota unique. Native languages, ceremonies, and stories should be honored and supported. The Crazy Horse Memorial pictured here may be lesser known than Mount Rushmore, but it carries deep meaning. Created and led by Native voices, it honors a leader who protected his people's way of life. It's a living symbol of resilience and cultural self-determination. So unlike other landmarks within the state, this site emerged through Indigenous initiative and vision. It represents a shift from being spoken about to doing something. And as we decolonize tourism, it's vital to uplift spaces like this that reflect Indigenous leadership and narratives from within. So to decolonize tourism, we must ask, who benefits? Who is represented? And who gets to tell the story? It really means replacing extract systems with practices that restore that leadership and the cultural agency. Decolonizing tourism involves empowering Indigenous communities to shape how they are represented, ensuring tourism revenue benefits them directly, and dismantling exploitive narratives. These principles align with the RISE mission of responsible, impactful, sustainable, and ethical travel. It's not just about changing narratives, but transforming those systems. I'd like to share a trailer from Lakota Nation versus United States. This documentary explores the seizure of the Black Hills, which is sacred Lakota land, and reminds us why historical truth and Indigenous perspective are essential in tourism.
I want to tell you about the Sioux uprising, but I don't know where to begin.
At the center of all the treaties the Lakota have signed with the United States government is the Black Hills.
X marks an agreement.
Most tribes have treaties with the federal government, and they're all under the War Department.
And another X marks this land as ours.
This is our Mecca, the most sacred place in the world.
That's why the Black Hills are not for sale, because we're not for sale.
When they illegally took the land from our people, it
Some
wasn't just the land itself that was taken. It was part of a process to colonize us. You can make the people suffer by destroying their economic system and their languages and their culture, then you can try to conquer a people.
As an Indigenous person, as someone who comes from this land, I'm just trying to exist.
Our work here is not just about reclaiming land, but reclaiming power.
We are Lakota, Lakota, and Nakota.
We're the last of the fighters. We've held on for so long and will continue to hold on. We're not going anywhere.
We are fighting for the integrity of our people. We are building the world that we want to live in.
So continuing with some historical context, the site known as Mount Rushmore, as seen in that trailer, was originally named the six grandfathers by Lakota medicine man Nicholas Black Elk. So each direction, west, east, north, south, above, and below, represented a sacred teaching. And in 1927, when the US began carving out the four presidents into that granite, for many Lakota, that was a final act of conquest. And these leaders, despite their prominence in US history, all played roles in Native displacement. So while celebrated as a symbol of democracy today, Mount Rushmore also stands as a reminder of broken treaties and desecrated land. Anti-oppressive tourism begins with accountability. Indigenous cultures must be represented as living, dynamic communities that exist today and not reduced to performances of the past. Indigenous people should be leading tourism planning, not just consulted. So we must also meet small businesses within these communities where they are. And colonial timelines and expectations don't foster that trust. Flexibility, patience, and honoring Indigenous ways of working are essential for equitable partnerships. Tourism remains an economic powerhouse in South Dakota, but Indigenous voices we've seen are still underrepresented. And thankfully, many tribal leaders and allies are actively working to change that, reclaiming narratives and benefits. So as we've talked a little bit about, major attractions often lack Indigenous context, and inclusive tourism means empowering those Native communities to share their own stories, guide their own experiences, and be fairly represented in the industry. So one ongoing challenge is cultural commodification, reducing identity to entertainment. But there's real opportunity to reframe tourism to honor truth, promote integrity, and return control to Indigenous storytellers. Decolonizing tourism is a shared responsibility. Governments, nonprofits, and businesses must collaborate together with tribal communities to ensure that planning and benefits are equitable and respectful. So, working alongside the South Dakota Native Tourism Alliance, the Indigenous Tourism Collaborative of the Americas is one example of this shared leadership. They elevate Indigenous-led cultural and economic models within the region. So ethical tourism means Indigenous communities can guide how their stories are told through cultural protocols, informed consent, and rejecting stereotypes. So tools like ethical travel guides and native designed itineraries can help support this progress. So Lakota Youth Development empowers youth and preserves culture. In partnership with Trafalgar and TTC, they host guests for storytelling and hands-on learning. which offers that cultural exchange and economic support. So Tatonka Res Tours on the Pine Ridge Reservation also offers immersive Lakota-led experiences that explore history, spirituality, and resilience. Revenue stays within the community and supporting local businesses and net self-determination. So tourism must benefit Indigenous communities and not just extract from them. Revenue sharing, tribal ownership, and community-first planning support that long-term well-being. And when Indigenous communities are economically secure, they can invest more deeply in language, culture, and environmental care, benefiting both residents and visitors that are seeking that vibrant culture. Everyone thrives when tourism supports the people who steward this land. So while education is key through visitor materials, staff training, and school curricula, advocacy matters too, and systemic change that leads to better experience offerings starts with informed, courageous people asking better questions and pushing for equity within tourism. So decolonizing tourism is not a checklist, and I'm sure we've all heard that phrase. It's a commitment. So invest in Indigenous-led experiences, build respectful partnerships, and advocate for policies that center Indigenous voices. In supporting those systems, not just stories that sustain sovereignty, stewardship, and cultural vitality. So in summary, South Dakota's tourism cannot thrive equitably without Indigenous leadership. Cultural collaboration, inclusive policymaking, and ethical storytelling are essential to creating a just and sustainable future for the industry. Indigenous culture and history are not just part of the story. They're ancestrally woven into the very landscapes and landmarks that define South Dakota's tourism value chain. And without this context, everyone loses out on the full depth and richness of the experience. There's still more to learn. What metrics support decolonized tourism? How can local destination management organizations become more accountable? Let's keep asking and listening. Let's support Native-led tourism. Let's work with Indigenous partners, and let's use our voices to advocate. This work belongs to all of us. So thank you so much for your time and attention. I welcome any questions or reflections, and if you'd like to connect or continue the conversation, I'd love to hear from you. Thanks.
So thank you very much to Christina. And if you're interested in learning more, John Sutherland shared a link in the chat. And I'm sure Christina would love to connect with people who want to hear more about her work. So we're now going to move on to the final presentation for the morning. And before I introduce our next speaker, I just want to remind everyone that afterwards, and Vinci put Christina's email in the chat. Thank you so much, Vinci. After our final presentation, we will break for lunch, and then we will return or breakfast or dinner, wherever in the world you happen to be. And then we'll come back together in the afternoon for another round of really exciting presentations. So we hope you'll join us again. And I will remind you of the timing after our next presentation. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Natalie. Natalie Amezcua is a humane educator and world traveler dedicated to understanding the systemic issues impacting people, animals, and the planet. With over a decade of global teaching experience, she leverages education as a tool to bridge equity gaps and inspire action for a healthier, solution-driven world. At New Roots Institute, her lessons have led 80% of students to pledge to reduce animal product consumption and 95% to support systemic reforms. Natalie's work spans Faunalytics and Rise Travel Institute, where she supports and co-builds transformative education programs rooted in sustainability, justice, and compassionate leadership. And Natalie's presentation is titled From Siloed to Integrated, Aligning Animal and Travel Justice Through Food Systems.
All right, hi everyone. Can everyone hear me? Awesome, okay. I will be looking to the side because that is where my slides are. So if I'm looking this way, I'm not ignoring, I'm actually just looking at the slides. So today I'm going to be talking about aligning animal and travel justice through food systems. And the goal of this study is to highlight overlooked ethical issues in tourism, hopefully provide a more holistic model of justice that includes human communities and non-human animals. And it is in Route 2, offer a roadmap for travelers and organizations seeking to align food choices with justice-centered values. So today's outline is for the next 15 minutes. This topic, I do want to say this topic is very multi-layered. It is very complex, and it's really exciting to dive into. So please keep in mind that we only have about 15 minutes. So I'm going to do the best to comprise the meta level overview into these 5 sections. So first, we're going to go through the introduction and background, so going over the context, identifying the gap, and exploring why this topic matters. We'll go through a quick overview of the problem statement and purpose of study, and then we'll do an extensive overview into some of the justice movement gaps with a focus on sustainability, impact, and ethical implications. And then we're going to close out with next steps. So starting with the background, so context, identified gaps, and why this matters. So many of us are already familiar with what travel justice is. It's a big reason why we're here today. It's a big reason why we have connections with the Rise Travel Institute. So I do want to quote Rise Travel Institute's vision as a perfect encapsulator of the travel justice movement and for the critical role they play in addressing unsustainable systemic injustices embedded within the current travel industry model in the West and the global North. So their mission is, we envision a world where travelers practice and promote responsible, impactful, sustainable, and ethical travel that uplifts global communities and protects natural ecosystems. So this is what the travel justice movement is. And I wanted to give us some insight into what the animal justice movement is. So the animal justice or animal rights movement is a social and political movement that advocates for the rights and well-being of other animals, specifically animals that are used for human use and or human benefit. A typical goal of the animal justice movement is ending factory farming, banning animal testing, and legal recognition of animal rights and as sentient beings. So to the untrained eye, this movement appears to be focused only on non-human animal rights. And I'm going to be explaining further in this presentation that animal justice is interconnected with almost every global pressing issue we are facing today, including but not limited to human rights issues, environmental sustainability issues, and is also upheld by governmental and social structures that define and uphold the status quo that detriments humans, other animals, and the planet, such as politics and post-colonial practices. Okay, a little bit about my background. So my interest in exploring the intersection between travel justice and animal justice is deeply personal, and it's rooted in my lived experiences, my values, and my evolving understanding of the world around me. And as an avid traveler, I have long appreciated the cultural richness and deep connections made possible through travel. And with that appreciation comes a growing commitment to ensure that my actions, and I'm sure I share this with a lot of us in the room, both abroad and at home, align with values of justice, compassion, and care for humans, non-human animals, and the planet. So through firsthand experiences, I witnessed how food systems reflect broader injustices, and they're intertwined with labor exploitation, environmental racism, public health crisis, and the commodification of both human and non-human life. And it becomes increasingly clear to me that the same power structures that uphold inequalities or inequities in the tourism industry, particularly for marginalized communities, also sustain the industry exploitation of animals for food. And in other words, I believe deeply that we cannot achieve human liberation without also addressing animal liberation, because these struggles are not separate. They are interconnected and rooted in the same systems of domination, extraction, and disregard, whether operating within travel, within food, or governance. And this belief fuels my desire to explore the overlooked connections between the travel justice and animal justice movements, and to imagine new pathways forward that center equity, sustainability, and collective well-being. And on a professional level, I am a factory farming expert and spend most of my time giving Socratic-style seminars and lectures at various higher ed campuses such as Cornell, UCLA, USC, Adelphi University, Pomona College, and so forth. And I work full-time for a nonprofit organization called New Roots Institute. All right. So these 2 points highlight the disconnect at the center of this study. So the travel justice movement is often concerned with human rights, fair labor, and environmental issues, and occasionally addresses animals in the context of wildlife tourism, but it rarely examines the treatment of animals used for food, even though animal agriculture has major social, ethical, and ecological consequences. And this emission, I do want to say, isn't neutral. The systems that produce animal-based foods are also deeply tied to worker exploitation, like I mentioned earlier, environmental degradation, and global health crises. So by not addressing the treatment of animals used for food, we miss an opportunity to confront a web of interconnected injustices. And on the other side, animal justice scholarship frequently critiques industrial agriculture, but its insights rarely appear in tourism or travel ethics discussions. So for example, conversations around sustainable or ethical travel may focus on local cuisine, but not question the consumption of animal products that rely on the very systems animal justice seeks to dismantle. So this disconnect creates, again, a blind spot in both fields, one that this research hopefully aims to illuminate. And as I'll continue to argue, bridging this gap is essential to creating a more holistic, justice-oriented approach to travel. Okay, and I concise why this matters into 3 main points. So justice movements, first point is justice movements cannot fully succeed without addressing the human-animal divide that underlies many forms of systemic harm. Diet is central to culture and ethics, especially in the context of travel, and travelers' consumption choices affect local communities, food sovereignty, and the lives of non-human animals. And the systems that, again, harm animals for food production often also exploit workers, damage ecosystems, and undermine human health and well-being. So today I will be focusing primarily on the first point, but I want to emphasize that all 3 are deeply interconnected and inform the broader systemic and theoretical frameworks of this work. Okay, so while both movements aim to promote justice and reduce harm, again, they rarely engage with each other. Travel justice tends to, again, focus on human rights, labor. I'm just kind of repeating this at this point so we can kind of have that foundational understanding of the difference between the two. And then again, most ethical travel frameworks focus on sourcing local or reducing food waste, but they often ignore the ethics of eating animals. And this oversight has, again, broader implications, not just for animal suffering, but for workers' rights, ecological damage, and so forth. So the purpose of this study is to explore the disconnect between travel justice and animal justice movements, examine how excluding animals used for food limits travel justice scope on food sovereignty, sustainability, and ethical travel, highlights the need for integrating animal ethics within travel justice frameworks, and advocates for a holistic intersectional approach to justice encompassing humans, animals, and the environment. So section 4, this is the largest section of today's presentation. There are many research questions, there's many directions and theoretical frameworks for this topic, much of which I aim to continue exploring. But today's main nugget of this project is focusing on research questions regarding justice movement gaps within the theoretical framework of intersectionality in efforts to explore these overlapping systems of oppression across species, race, class, etc., and provide a foundation and a foundational awareness and knowledge to the larger research focus. Other questions and frameworks that we won't be diving into today is questions about traveler impact on host communities. So how do tourist food habits influence local food economies and animal agriculture? And in what ways are culinary tourism practices reinforcing animal exploitation or disrupting local food sovereignty? So for example, colonial food practices, loss of indigenous culinary practices. We also won't be talking much about the ethical tensions and cultural dimensions, shifts in consumption between at home versus abroad, and the environmental and social implications of those shifts. And then other theoretical frameworks that, again, we won't be discussing today is the post-colonial theory, so working to examine the legacy of colonial food systems in tourism, and political ecology, so to analyze relationships between food systems, power, and place. Okay. So part 1 of this research question that I wanted to dive into to kind of get us to a more solid understanding of where we are is exploring this complex topic by laying out the assumptions and support from the travel justice movement regarding food systems and animals used for consumption. So based on available research, personal experience, and review of existing discourse, the main topics the travel justice movement's advocates for the support of are local seasonal food and cuisine, farm-to-table practices, reducing food waste, ethical sourcing, indigenous food systems. So for example, supporting local restaurants and experiencing the host community's culture through food, fair wages and working conditions, investing in local food economies, addressing food deserts and inequality, and promoting local and traditional cuisine, and then lastly, conscious consumption. So as you can see, the travel justice movement tends to focus on food justice from a human-centered and environmental perspective. So supporting local economies, reducing food waste, and preserving culture of food waste. However, animals used for food consumption are rarely, if ever, included as stakeholders in these frameworks. So it is rarely, the movement rarely critiques or addresses the treatment of animals used in food systems, and revealing an implicit assumption that animal consumption is a neutral or inevitable part of travel. And then food ethics gets defined and applied in, therefore, I've identified 3 gaps in food ways, or in ways food ethics and animal rights doesn't and shouldn't be defined and applied in travel ethics and justice. So that is, it overlooks the ethical treatment of animals used in local or traditional cuisines, assumes consuming animal products is culturally fixed or unproblematic, and then neglects the impacts of animal agriculture on global justice. And so that's what we're going to be talking about a little bit more today. And this question here, so in what ways does the exclusion of animals used for food from travel justice discourse impact the movement's ability to promote holistic justice, sustainability, and equity? So although travel justice movements often advocate for sustainability, equity, and ethical responsibility, they rarely account for the role of animals used in food systems. So this exclusion reveals a major gap in the movement's ability to promote truly holistic justice. And I'll be focusing on 4 major consequences, or what's at stake in this submission. And that is the consequence on ethics, on sustainability, on food sovereignty, and on consistency. Okay, so starting on ethics. So by not acknowledging the lives of animals used for food, the travel justice movement replicates a speciesist hierarchy that mirrors other forms of structural oppression. I pull from Afan Silko's work, particularly in Afroism, where they challenge the notion that racism and speciesism are separate issues. They argue that both forms of oppression stem from a flawed framework rooted in white supremacy and the human-animal divide. So the human-animal divide is an ideological construct that supports systems of domination, including white supremacy. Afan Silko posit animality as a colonial construct. So they argue that the concept of animal is a colonial invention used to marginalize anyone who deviates from the ideal, quote unquote, ideal human, such as racial and ethnic minorities and women. The historical tendency to portray marginalized groups as animal-like would be meaningless without the collective belief that non-human animals are inherently inferior. And by rejecting the notion of human superiority and recognizing the interconnectedness of all beings, it is possible to dismantle the white supremacist narrative that underpins systems of injustice. So I do hope that the audience here recognizes that these points reflect a critical theory lens, particularly drawing from decolonial, anti-racist, and post-humanistic scholarship. Okay, and then ethics and travel justice movement. So we have 3 points or 4 points that I wanted to touch on, how these merge together. So by ignoring species hierarchy, the travel justice movement's failure to acknowledge the lives of animals used for food perpetuates a speciesist hierarchy that Afan Silko criticized. This failure contributes to the broader system of structural oppression that devalues and exploits those perceived as less than or animal-like. Dismantling the human-animal binary is essential to dismantling systems of domination that oppress anyone outside the ideal human body. And therefore, addressing the travel justice movement's speciesism is connected to fighting other forms of oppression. And this top image is from a series of ongoing illegal child labor reported, this is here in the US, within our food system. So this is very relevant to context within the global north as well as global south. And I'll be making those connections further on. All right, so moving on to sustainability. So industrial animal agriculture is a leading cause of deforestation. I'm sure a lot of us have heard of this, or the term deforestation, water use, emissions, and biodiversity loss, and yet it remains largely unaddressed in sustainable travel discourse. So for example, 80% of deforestation in the Amazon forest is linked to animal agriculture. And we know that the connections to that is biodiversity loss through habitat destruction and fragmentation. And then the Amazon acts as a crucial climate sink. So deforestation releases the stored carbon, right, contributing to greenhouse gas emissions and exacerbating climate change, which disproportionately impacts the global south. And then to put this into context, 50% of Brazil's greenhouse gas emissions are from deforestation. And I'm going to talk a little bit about these 2 points about deforestation before I continue on social impacts of deforestation. So deforestation, 80% of deforestation in the Amazon is linked to animal agriculture. This is mostly, so a lot of the fires that we hear of are mostly man-made by ranchers and farmers that want to clear the land to either grow crops to feed to animals in factory farms, they require a lot of feed, or to graze beef cattle. We know that 50% of the emissions comes from Brazil, is from deforestation, and then also this threatens biodiversity loss of species. So if we want to kind of take this into account and put a number on it, according to the Food and Agriculture Organization of the UN, deforestation is the second leading cause of climate change after the burning of fossil fuels, and accounts for almost 20% of all greenhouse gas emissions. And if we want to think about like how many acres of Earth's forests were deforested in 2022, the answer is 16.3 million, and that is equivalent to 45,000 football fields a day, which is equivalent to about double the size of Disney World. So if you've been to Disney World before, that's double the size of Disney World. Every single day is being deforested. And this is on a global scale, not specifically to the Amazon. And then more than 10,000 species of plants and animals are at high risk of extinction due to the destruction of the Amazon rainforest. So 35% of which has already been deforested or degraded. So it is an issue, especially when we're talking about visiting places where we want to see natural habitats and wildlife and enjoy, you know, the beauty of nature. This is a direct threat. And then just to kind of close this out for us, we are going through a current massive extinction where of all mammal biomass on Earth, 96% is livestock and humans. So if we think about it this way, 96% of all mammal biomass on Earth is humans and what humans eat or what we require to eat or want to eat. And then 4% is wildlife. Continuing on to the social aspects. And I'm seeing some chats or questions in the chat, so I'm really enjoying that people are, I like to see people enjoying or engaging with this context, because it is very complex and there's so many things we can discuss. Okay, so in addition to the environmental sustainable impacts, and again, I just touched very briefly of deforestation, the impacts of deforestation also directly threatens indigenous communities and livelihoods, contributes to displacement and violence through illegal logging, land grabbing, and other deforestation-related activities, often leading to the displacement of indigenous communities, and can result in violence and threats against those who defend the forest. Deforestation also contributes to a loss of cultural identity and traditional knowledge as sacred sites are destroyed. And it also disrupts traditional practices and hinders transmission of intergenerational knowledge, health concerns to people and other animals due to pollution, loss of access to traditional medicines, economic hardships due to loss of resources, and it also threatens the protection of indigenous land rights and territories. So these are all essential for promoting both environmental conservation and social justice within the Amazon. And to put displacement and violence into perspective, according to Global Witness, about 40 million people, including more than 500 indigenous and ethnic groups, call the Amazon their home. These are groups that are disconnected from society. And then almost 2,000 land and environmental defenders were killed between 2012 and 2022 for protecting the planet. And in 2022, at least 177 defenders lost their lives for protecting our planet. And 36% of all the defenders killed were indigenous. And the situation in Latin America remains particularly concerning. In 2022, the region accounted for 88% of those 177 killings. And 1 in 5 murders of defenders worldwide took place in the Amazon rainforest in 2022. So with violence, torture, and threats, a shared reality for communities across the region. So this is very real for those living in these situations. Okay, so part B on sustainability. So part A was deforestation. Part B, I just wanted to really talk about or briefly shed some light to the inefficient use of natural resources and the ultimate shrinking of the food supply, which impacts everyone on the planet, especially those in the global south and many of the destinations and countries that we like to visit. So for example, 80% of global farmland in the world produces only 17% of the calories that we consume and 38% of global protein supply. So that 80% is used for livestock, meat, dairy, and textiles, and alternatively, 16% of farmland that is used for crops for food, like think about rice, grains, fruits, vegetables, legumes, produces, so that's 16% of the farmland is used for crops for food. That produces 83% of the global calorie supply and 62% of the global protein supply. And here is a short graph by Our World in Data to kind of break down how our land is being used. So if we go to the top, of all of Earth's surface, 29% of it is land. Of all land, 76% is habitable. Of all habitable land, so we're looking at all habitable as 100% of habitable land, 45% is used for agriculture, so almost half of habitable land. And then 80% of all agriculture is used for livestock, meat, dairy, and textiles, and only produces 17% of global calorie supply and 38% of protein supply. So ultimately, it shrinks the food supply. And all that 80% of land, how much land that is, that actually spans the land requirements for meat and dairy production worldwide is equivalent to the area the size of North and South America. So spanning all the way from Alaska down south to Tierra del Fuego. And then when it comes to water use, plant-based proteins require 75% less water than, for example, beef. And I like to use beef patty or burgers as an example of water use, just because a lot of us are very familiar with that product. And to put this again into perspective, 1/4 pound burger, or the research on the water footprint and meat suggests that on average, it takes about 1,800 gallons of water to produce 1 pound of beef, which translates to around 450 gallons for a 1/4 pound hamburger. So to put this into perspective, 450 gallons of water is equivalent to about 1 month of showers for the average person, or 25 showers. And multiple life cycle assessments and environmental studies support that beef is one of the most water-intensive foods, especially due to feed production and water use in raising cattle. And here is a overview to summarize, or a snapshot to summarize the consequences of maybe not including animals used for food on sustainability. I want to close out with this visualization. Again, some of the main global impacts driven by our food system, of which most resources and land are used within livestock farming and animal protein, about 80%, and is driven by the global north. So the US is the largest meat consumer in the world, for example, not including fish. We're producing about 279 pounds of meat per person per year. So a lot of these greenhouse gas emissions, land use, fresh water withdrawals, eutrophication, mammal biodiversity, and bird biodiversity is being driven by the global north that has a more meat-heavy diet or westernized diet. And then I did want to show you a quick video of some of the local environmental racism impacts that humans are experiencing based on this demand for animal-based protein, and not talking about the injustices embedded within those systems.
You're looking at a lake of toxic pig feces and urine, the size of 4 football fields. That's because thousands upon thousands of pigs are inside of these buildings. Their waste falls through slats in the concrete floor, and it's flushed directly into this giant open air cesspool. How many of these kinds of factories are there? In North Carolina alone, there are over 2,000, and the consequences are disastrous.
The waste falls through the floors. It's flushed out into an open pit, like a cesspool. It's easy for a big hog operation to have as much waste as a medium-sized city. Of course, the pit will fill up, so it has to be emptied, and they're emptied by spraying the liquid waste. If you're familiar with a garden sprayer, they're gigantic versions of that. So they're making droplets, fine mists out of this liquid waste, and that can drift downwind into the neighboring communities.
So this is where they spray animal waste on us. This is about 8 feet from my mother's house.
What is it like when the mist?
It's like, you think it's raining?
Really?
You think it's raining. We don't open the doors of the windows, but the odor still comes in. It takes your breath away.
So a lot of these folks have higher instances of skin infections, upper respiratory diseases, miscarriages, blue baby syndrome, and in 2022, there was solid data released linking roughly 13,000 deaths to this type of air pollution every single year. And then I do recognize that we are short on time, so I just wanted to briefly talk about food sovereignty. So imported animal products, mass tourism demand, and culinary tourism often undermine local plant-based or traditional food systems. And then the travel justice movement, by not acknowledging the lives of animals used for food, misses a crucial opportunity to challenge a speciesist hierarchy that mirrors other forms of structural oppression. And this failure perpetuates a system that devalues non-human animal lives and contributes to the broader mechanism of control and exploitation. And then lastly, next steps. So we want to draw connections. These blind spots, it's not accidental. It reflects a deeper anthropocentric worldview that continues to shape justice narratives, even within progressive movements. Just as colonial frameworks devalue indigenous food systems, so too do dominant paradigms erase animals as subjects with ethical standing. And then to remain credible and transformative, the travel justice movement must expand its ethical framework to include animals used in food systems. Only then can it truly embody the principles of sustainability, justice, and regeneration that it claims to uphold. And while comprehensive impact analysis of, for example, vegan travel are still emerging, research highlights its potential to contribute to sustainable tourism by reducing environmental impacts. And then lastly, some next steps for myself is begin with literature review of both movements, identify potential case studies and voices to uplift, develop an annotated bibliography to keep sources organized, and then draft proposals, introduction to research and research questions sections. And then lastly, I know we are short with time, but if you have any questions, I am happy to answer and also to connect outside of this.
Thank you so much, Natalie. There are a few longer questions in the chat that I encourage you to take a look at and respond to, one of which is, can you point people towards some continued learning? One of the questions that we have is, do you have to be vegan to handle food ethically?
So ethics is a very personal question. Only you can define what ethics is for you. I will say just the first step that we can take as individuals, whether we're traveling, whether we're at home, is reflecting with yourself what you value and what you don't value, and try to find gaps in that. So for example, if I see someone kicking a dog and that I don't like that, I don't value that, can I apply that same essence to other animals, for example? Where am I being, where are those gaps? But I don't think you have, on the broader spectrum, it is impossible to assume that the world will go vegan. That is not what this is advocating for. That is an impossible task and an impossible ask, and I recognize that. It's more so, how can we include non-human animals or other animals within our justice frameworks and ensure that they are stakeholders in the conversation?
Thank you. Like I said, I encourage you to continue this conversation in the chat and get in touch with Natalie so that you can further the conversation and learn more. I know she's got a lot more information to share. But now we have come to the end of our morning session. Thank you to all of the presenters. It's been a really thought-provoking morning. full of lots of really interesting ideas and lots of things to think about the next time we all are traveling, even in our own communities. So thank you so much. We're going to take a break for a little while now. Go stretch your legs, have something to eat. And we hope to see you all back here. Our first presentation of the afternoon session will begin at 2 o'clock Eastern time. So hopefully you all come back for that. I would recommend maybe just muting and turning off your camera and walking away rather than having to leave and come back. It might be easier for technology and to get things started on time. And then we have an afternoon full of some really incredible presentations. So we do hope to see you back here again at 2 o'clock Eastern time. And then after all the presentations, like Vinci said earlier, we have some exciting announcements to share about what's to come with RISE. So we hope you'll stick around for that as well. So with that, we will see you in a little bit.